Mina, bloodied and trembling, begged for help, but the hospital staff dismissed her with cold indifference. "We can't treat everyone," they muttered, eyeing her torn sari and muddy sandals with disdain. Just as she turned to leave, heartbroken and swaying on weak legs, the ICU doors burst open. Dr. Ayan Varma stepped in, eyes sharp, presence commanding, and everyone froze. The hospital lobby was cold, the chill of sterile floors and harsh fluorescent lighting almost overwhelming. Mina had never been in a place like this before. She had never felt so out of place, so small amidst all the grandeur and order of the medical world. Her clothes were simple, faded from years of use, and her shoes had seen better days. The dirt and exhaustion on her face reflected the long journey she had endured just to get here. She clutched her side, where a deep, painful bruise throbbed, remnants of an accident she barely remembered. Her hands shook as she approached the reception desk, a soft tremor betraying the weight of her fear. She needed help, but the fear of rejection was a heavy presence she couldn't shake. The receptionist glanced up briefly, her eyes scanning Mina from head to toe, her expression barely masking the judgment. "You'll need to leave," the receptionist said flatly, her tone cold and indifferent. "You can't afford treatment here. You don't even have insurance. This hospital isn't for someone like you." Mina's heart sank. She had hoped for some kindness, for someone to at least acknowledge the pain she was in, but all she felt was the weight of the world pushing her down further. I need help," Mina whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, I can't go back out there." But the receptionist barely spared her another glance, already busy with a more important patient. "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Go to the free clinic down the street if you're desperate," she said, already turning away. Tears pricked at the corners of Mina's eyes. She felt so invisible, so worthless. She had never been treated this way before, and the humiliation stung deeply. Just as she turned to leave, her foot catching the edge of the tiled floor, a voice rang out, cutting through the tension like a thunderclap. "Hold on. What's going on here?" The voice was sharp, commanding, and unmistakable. Mina froze. She recognized it immediately. It was Dr. Arif. Her heart skipped a beat. Dr. Arif had been her love, her first love. 2 years ago, he had been a stranger, a man who captured her heart, made her feel seen in a world that had always looked past her. But everything had changed at that party, that night when she had arrived in a simple dress, hoping to impress his family, only to be humiliated for her humble background. Arif had not been there to stop it, had not even seen it. Now, in the hospital, she felt that same sting of being small and invisible, and his presence only magnified her shame. She quickly pulled her scarf tighter around her face, trying to shield herself from his gaze, trying to hide her identity from him. Arif's eyes narrowed when he saw the interaction. Without a second thought, he strode over to the receptionist. "What do you mean she can't stay here?" he demanded, his voice rising with authority. "She's injured. Get her admitted immediately. Now." The receptionist stammered, caught off guard by his sudden appearance and commanding presence. "But, Dr. Arif, she doesn't have insurance." "I don't care," he interrupted, his voice cold but resolute. "Get her admitted. Now." The staff seemed to shrink under his gaze, their resistance crumbling in the face of his authority. As they hurried to comply, Dr. Arif turned toward Mina. His eyes softened for a moment, but he noticed how she quickly pulled the scarf tighter around her face, hiding her features from him. Something stirred in his chest, a pang of recognition, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't let personal emotions interfere with his duties. Yet, a sense of curiosity lingered in the back of his mind, wondering why she seemed so familiar. As the nurses took her back to her room, Arif watched her go, his eyes following her every move. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this woman, something he couldn't quite place, but he didn't have the time to figure it out now. Mina had been admitted, and that was all that mattered. The days that followed were a blur for Mina. Dr. Arif continued to oversee her care, but their interactions remained brief, businesslike. She kept herself hidden beneath the scarf, never allowing him a glimpse of her face, though she could feel his presence watching her, feeling his gaze every time he entered the room. She had done everything in her power to avoid him, hoping that the physical distance between them would be enough to keep the painful memories at bay. But Dr. Ariv was persistent. He came by every day, checking on her progress, adjusting her treatment. Yet, there was always something about him that made her heart flutter with a mixture of hope and dread. She hadn't seen him in so long, but the sound of his voice was still etched deeply in her memory. One day, as he entered her room to conduct his rounds, Mina sat up on the bed, her face hidden beneath the scarf, her gaze fixed on the floor. "How are you today?" Dr. Ariv asked, his voice filled with quiet concern. Mina stiffened, her pulse quickening. She wanted to answer, but the words caught in her throat. The sound of his voice, the same voice she had once loved so deeply, sent a rush of emotions crashing into her. It was both comforting and terrifying, a reminder of all the years of silence and the pain she had endured. "I'm fine," she murmured, trying to keep her voice steady, trying to block out the feelings that threatened to overwhelm her. Ariv stepped closer, his eyes scanning her, noticing the tension in her body, the way she pulled the scarf even tighter around her neck. His curiosity grew. He had an overwhelming urge to know more about this woman. He couldn't shake the feeling that he knew her, that there was something familiar about her. "Mina," he said softly, almost to himself, though he didn't mean for it to escape his lips. The name seemed to hang in the air, and Mina's heart skipped. She quickly turned her face away, her fingers gripping the edge of the scarf tighter, her anxiety escalating. Ariv hesitated, then gently placed a hand on the bed beside her. "You don't have to hide. I'm here to help you." Nothing more. But she didn't respond. She couldn't. Her heart raced, her thoughts in turmoil. What if he recognized her? What if he found out who she was? It was better this way, hiding her face, staying hidden in shadows. As Dr. Ariv left the room, Mina allowed herself to breathe again, her hands trembling as she clutched the fabric of her scarf. She could never let him see her face, not after what happened 2 years ago. She was not the woman he once knew, and she could never allow herself to be the object of his pity or regret. She couldn't bear it. Dr. Ariv sat alone in his office, the soft hum of the air conditioner the only sound breaking the silence. His fingers tapped absent-mindedly on the polished wooden desk, but his mind wasn't on the reports in front of him. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, lost in thought. That girl, the one with the injured arm and scarf wrapped tightly around her face, her voice still echoed in his ears. There was something hauntingly familiar about it. The way she avoided his gaze, the way she flinched slightly when he came close. His brows furrowed. "Why did it feel like I've heard that voice before?" he murmured to himself, leaning forward now, elbows on the desk, hands clasped. In those eyes there was pain, but something else too. A memory. He shook his head, frustrated, but the feeling wouldn't leave him. There was a knot in his chest, as if a part of his past had brushed by, just for a second, and then slipped away again. The soft click of the door, closing behind Dr. Ariv, echoed through the room. Mina sat on the edge of the bed, her scarf still wrapped tightly around her neck, as she looked down at her trembling hands. Ariv stood by the door for a moment, just watching her, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. There was something about this woman, something so familiar that he couldn't shake the feeling that he knew her. But it wasn't just that. There was a pain in her eyes, a pain he hadn't seen before, and something about her made him feel like he had failed her, like he had missed something crucial. "Mina," he said softly, almost a whisper, the name slipping out of his mouth before he realized it. "Is it really you?" Her head jerked up at the sound of her name. Her eyes widened, her face tightening as if she was trying to mask her emotions. She quickly turned her face away, trying to hide under the scarf, even though it seemed impossible to keep herself concealed any longer. Dr. Ariv took a step forward, the urge to reach out to her growing stronger with each passing second. But she was still pulling away, unwilling to face him. "Mina," his voice was thick with the weight of recognition, but his mind still struggled to put the pieces together. Her hand tightened around the fabric of her scarf, her lips trembling. She could feel the heat of his gaze, the intensity in his words, but she couldn't bring herself to look at him. The memories of that night 2 years ago came flooding back, and she couldn't bear to face him, not like this. Ariv knelt in front of her, his eyes searching hers, desperate to understand what had been left unsaid between them for so long. You don't have to hide anymore. I'm not going anywhere. A deep breath caught in Mina's chest as the weight of everything she had kept hidden for so long pressed on her. The pain, the heartbreak, the shame, it all resurfaced in an instant. Her fingers trembled as she slowly began to pull the scarf away from her face, her movements hesitant. She couldn't avoid this moment any longer. Not with him standing there. Not with him looking at her like he still cared. Ariv's breath caught in his throat as she removed the scarf, revealing her face. The years had passed, but the woman sitting in front of him was still as beautiful as he remembered. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her face framed by the soft waves of her hair that had once always captivated him. Mina, Ariv whispered, almost in disbelief. It's really you. Mina nodded silently, her eyes downcast. A wave of emotions washed over her, and the floodgates she had kept shut for 2 years finally broke open. With a soft, broken voice, she began to speak. I couldn't face you, Ariv. Not after that night. Not after everything your family did to me. Ariv's face twisted in confusion. He had no idea what she was referring to. He had thought she just disappeared, left without a word. But now, hearing the pain in her voice, the hurt she had carried all this time, his heart began to ache with guilt. What happened, Mina? Why did you leave? He asked, his voice soft but filled with desperation. She shook her head, unable to meet his eyes. That night at your family's party, I went there thinking I could finally be someone you could be proud of. I thought I could be enough for you. But when I arrived in my simple dress, I was already being judged. Your family looked at me like I didn't belong, like I wasn't good enough. I tried to ignore it, tried to smile, but it was impossible. They laughed at my clothes, my background. They mocked me for being just me. She paused, her chest heaving as she swallowed back the sobs that threatened to break free. And then your mother, she told me, in front of everyone, that I was too simple for someone like you. That you could never marry someone from my kind of background, someone who wasn't worthy enough for your status. She said I wasn't fit to be in your world. Ariv stood frozen, his heart sinking into his stomach. He had no idea his family had treated her this way. He had never known. His mother, his own family had humiliated the one person who had meant everything to him, and he hadn't even been there to stop it. Mina took a deep breath, the words she had been holding in for so long finally spilling out, her voice cracking with emotion. I couldn't stay, Ariv. I couldn't be in a place where I was so unwanted, where I was nothing but a joke. I knew I wasn't the one your family wanted for you, and I didn't want to cause you more trouble, more humiliation. I thought it would be better to just disappear, to leave you alone, so you wouldn't have to face their scorn because of me. You deserve better than someone like me. Ariv felt his knees weaken beneath him. He reached out instinctively, grasping her hand and pulling her gently toward him. Mina, no, you were never the problem. I was. I never stood up for you. I let them control everything, let them make decisions about who I should be with instead of trusting my own heart. He squeezed her hand tightly, his voice filled with regret. I should have been there. I should have protected you. Mina's eyes brimmed with tears, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. But you didn't. You didn't even know. And I was too ashamed, too scared of being a burden to you. I was a fool, Ariv whispered, his voice breaking. I never should have let them treat you that way. And I never should have let you go. Mina closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks as she let herself believe the words he was saying. It doesn't matter now, she said softly, wiping her tears. What matters is that we're here now. Ariv gently cupped her face, lifting her chin so their eyes met. You matter. You always have, Mina. No matter what anyone else said, no matter what you've been through. You matter to me. And with that, the world seemed to stop for just a moment. Mina could feel his sincerity, his regret, and the love he had always had for her. She finally let herself believe it, finally let herself be vulnerable, be seen in a way she had never allowed herself to be before. She took a shaky breath, but the weight of her past finally lifted, the shame and fear slowly fading away. Ariv gently pulled her into an embrace, holding her close, vowing silently that no one, not his family, not anyone, would ever make her feel small again. The weight of the silence in the room was heavy, but it was different now. It was not a silence of unspoken words or hidden pain, but a quiet understanding, a moment where both Mina and Ariv allowed themselves to breathe, to feel, and to heal. Ariv gently wiped away the last of her tears with his thumb, his heart swelling with emotion as he looked at her. He had spent years haunted by the thought of her disappearance, never knowing why she left, but now that he finally understood, the shame he felt for not protecting her was unbearable. But it was also the beginning of something new. "Mina," he whispered, his voice filled with both sorrow and hope. "I was a fool to let you go, but I'm not going to let you hide anymore. Not from me, not from anyone." He gently pulled her to her feet, taking her hand in his. It was warm, steady, a contrast to the trembling hand she had offered him just moments before. Her chest tightened to the gesture, but there was something comforting in the way his hand enveloped hers, something familiar that made her feel safe. For the first time in a long time, Mina felt like she could stand tall, like the past didn't have to define her. "What are you doing, Ariv?" she asked quietly, her voice still wavering. "You can't just change everything." But Ariv was resolute. "You've spent enough time hiding, Mina. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be known for who you truly are. Not the woman they humiliated, but the woman you are now. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows that." Her breath caught in her throat as she looked at him, unsure whether she could truly walk into the world again, unsure if she could face all the people who might still judge her. But the determination in his eyes gave her strength. She had spent 2 long years running, hiding, and living in shame. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to step out. Ariv took a deep breath, and without another word, he turned and led her out of the room. The hospital corridor felt like a different world, bright, sterile, and busy with the hurried steps of doctors, nurses, and patients alike. But all of it seemed distant, as if the world had become a mere blur around them. It was just him, Mina, and the weight of everything that had led them here. As they walked together down the hallway, Mina's heart raced. She could feel the eyes of the staff on them, curious, some even whispering under their breath. She wanted to shrink back, to pull away, but Ariv's grip on her hand was firm, steady, as if he was telling her she was not alone in this moment. When they reached the main lobby, Ariv paused, standing tall in front of the group of hospital staff gathered around. His usual confident demeanor was replaced by something softer, more vulnerable, yet no less commanding. "I need everyone to listen," he began, his voice carrying through the lobby, drawing the attention of every person in the room. "This woman, standing here before you, is the heart of my life. Her name is Mina." Mina's breath caught in her chest, her heart beating faster. She wasn't ready for this, wasn't ready to be the center of attention, to be introduced to the very people who had once looked down on her, mocked her, and believed her to be nothing more than a simple, insignificant woman. But here she was, standing beside the man she had once loved, and his words hit her with a force she hadn't expected. "This is Mina," Ariv continued, his voice unwavering. "The woman I failed. The woman who I should have stood up for. The woman who I now vow to protect, to honor, and to cherish." The room went silent. The murmurs of curiosity and disbelief spread like wildfire. The doctors, nurses, and staff who had once looked at Mina with judgment now exchanged glances, their eyes widening with the realization of who she truly was to Ariv. Mina's heart raced as she tried to hide behind the scarf, but it was no use. Ariv held her hand with such certainty, with such strength, that she couldn't pull away. It was as though his words had woven a shield around her, one that protected her from the judgments and expectations of the world. "I know some of you may have heard things about Mina," Ariv said, his voice growing firmer. "You may have heard that she doesn't belong here, that she's not good enough. I'm here to tell you that you were wrong. She is more than good enough. She is everything I could ever ask for, and I'm proud to have her by my side." There was a long moment of silence, the weight of Ariv's words sinking in. Mina stood still, unsure of how to process everything. The past 2 years have been a constant battle, and now, here she was, standing in front of all the people who had once looked at her with disdain, being introduced as something more than just a simple woman from a simple background. And then, something remarkable happened. One by one, the hospital staff began to nod, to smile, to offer their quiet support. The tension in the air lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Mina felt like she wasn't just a part of the background. She wasn't just the woman who had been looked down upon. A nurse, who had worked alongside Ariv for years, stepped forward. "We've all seen the way you care for your patients, Dr. Ariv," she said with a soft smile. "And if you believe in her, then that's all we need to know." Another doctor, one who had always been a little distant, gave a subtle nod of approval. "If she's good enough for you, then she's good enough for us." Ariv's chest swelled with pride as he looked at Mina, and for the first time, she allowed herself to breathe, to take in the support that surrounded her. With a final squeeze of her hand, Ariv turned to the crowd. "This is my heart, and I'm going to make sure she never feels small again." Mina's eyes welled with tears as the last of her fears fell away. The woman who had been humiliated, who had been left in the shadows, was finally seen. She was seen for the woman she had always been, not just in the eyes of Ariv, but now in the eyes of everyone around her. Ariv took a step back, his arms slipping around her shoulders. "Thank you," he said softly, more to Mina than anyone else. "You've always been enough." And with that, the world seemed to fade away, and for the first time in 2 years, Mina felt like she was home. The crowd around them had slowly dispersed, leaving the two of them standing in the middle of the lobby, hand in hand. Mina's heart finally felt light, her past no longer a burden she had to carry alone. Ariv smiled down at her, a quiet promise in his eyes. "I'll never let you hide again," he whispered. "Not from me, and certainly not from the world." And with those words, Mina finally allowed herself to believe it, that she could be seen, that she could be loved, that she could be the woman she always dreamed of becoming. And she would never again feel like she didn't belong. The future, for the first time, felt like an open road. In moments of pain and vulnerability, humanity should always come before status, wealth, or appearance. No one should be turned away from help just because they lack money, influence, or a powerful reference. Basic medical care, especially first aid, is a human right, not a privilege. Every injured soul deserves compassion, not judgment. A society that forgets this forgets its own heart. We must build a world where the first response is to heal, not to question someone's worth. Always choose kindness. Always choose humanity. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional, powerful stories that touch the heart and awaken the soul.